I think don't expect to just spend more and get more for your dollar. Like try to, and that's probably unintentional sort of plug for Five Ways. Like let someone guide you along the way. Being like, hey, last week I drank a Tasmanian Pinot, but I want to try something French. Like where should I go next?
G'day. Today we're going to ask the question of how does an independent family bottle shop be more than just a bottle shop? I'm Trent, and we're here on an unapologetically unprofessional, unfiltered wine journey. We're saying here, we drink, we try, we learn, and we connect. Now, today we're going to delve into one of Sydney's most respected bottle shops. Dare I say institution as well. It's been around for almost 40 years. So we're going to delve into the evolution of the business, evolution of the people behind the business, and also the evolution of customer as well. To join me on this chat is Ches Cook.
Yep.
If you checked out his Instagram, he lives a very full life, I think. Like there's photos of going to Havana, bit of wine, going to, was it Peru as well?
Yeah, it was a few years ago, yeah.
A bit more wine as well, sailing, a bit more wine, Italy, a bit more wine, and maybe some food as well. So thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, wine's probably the common theme there.
Wonderful. Yeah. So as we do with all our guests, we like to kick off with some icebreaker questions.
Yeah.
So the first one up is, what's your most memorable wine or most memorable wine moment?
There's been a lot because, I still feel kind of young, but the other day I'm 36 and I was like, hold on, I've now worked in wine for exactly half of my life. Yeah. So over that space of time, there's been a lot of good bottles. Crikey. I think there's great bottles and there's great experiences as well. And sometimes they come together. Yeah. So some of the best experiences and bottles happen to be standing in a cellar of a producer or in a vineyard or something like that. So the first thing that comes to mind is a visit to Hayman Lowenstein in the Mosel in Germany last year. And I've over the years had quite a few good experiences of visiting producers, especially overseas. But that was probably the best visit I've ever had. And they're being there with the owner, the winemaker, and drinking his top Rieslings, Ulan Lorbach, one of his top Rieslings, standing there with him while he's telling us about his philosophy, and his philosophy really resonating with my experiences, and the wine's just so good. It's just like, wow, like that's the first thing that pops to my mind. Yeah.
It was sunset, you had the food, you had the wine.
Yeah, I mean, the German food experiences were sort of not all great, but the wine definitely. So there are others for sure, and there's probably more expensive bottles of wine that I've had that that have been great as well. But
it's a moment, the experience.
When the wine and the moment come together like that, it's particularly special.
What's the last glass of wine that you had?
The last glass?
Yeah.
I think I only had a couple of beers last night, so that would be Thursday. Let me think. I mean, we're tasting wine in the shop pretty regularly, as in like multiple appointments a day, but let's take it as the last glass that I actually sat down to drink rather than a tasting. I think last weekend I took a bottle home of a Tuscan producer called, it's just here, Ciabarona. I'm butchering the pronunciation.
That's right. It sounds Italian.
Yeah. So it's a Tuscan producer and they've just gone through this big change. The long-term winemaker has actually purchased the property, replanted it all at high density, and is making wines of extreme elegance and red prettiness and like fine bone sort of tannin structure. And I took home just their entry level called Grammatica last weekend and absolutely loved it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
A person past or present they'll love to have a bottle of wine with. And what bottle would you pick?
So a person past or present who I would like to share a bottle with.
And what bottle would you pick? So it could be anything, a person outside of wine. It could be the Queen. It could be Jimi Hendrix.
Jimmy. Okay, so not someone necessarily I know. Okay. Well, downstairs in the shop right now, I'm playing some music from my favorite band, The National.
Yeah.
The lead singer, Matt. It's a band, they're American. I've seen them heaps of times. And I remember reading once that he had an interest in wine. And I remember being like, wow, that'd be cool if like he walked in here one day and wanted to sit down and have a bottle.
What bottle would you pick for him?
We've got up the back right now some old Rousseau, Premier Cru Rousseau from 02, which is a pretty awesome vintage in my opinion. Clos Saint-Jacques 02 from Rousseau. Wow. That'd go all right. Yeah.
Sounds all right.
I've been eyeing it off for over 12 months now.
I
definitely can't afford it. So.
Okay, next one. Unique or ultimate food and wine pairing?
For me, the country that does food best has got to be Italy for sure. So when you go to Piedmont and up around Barolo, it's pretty hard to beat a great bottle of Barolo and their signature dish, their tajarin pasta dish. Maybe throw some truffle on the top.
Yeah.
Unreal. Yeah.
White truffle, of course.
Yeah, it depends on the season. I guess. Yeah, so that's hard to beat.
Next one, biggest lesson learned on your wine journey. You said you're still relatively young, but then you've been on the journey for such a long time as well. What's the biggest lesson learned?
Yeah, so like we were saying before, I think in terms of wine as a profession and wine as in relation to Five Way Cellars, it's not to follow wine fads or trends too closely, and buy wine to sell to customers that you really stand behind and really believe in, and wine that you really like. And I think consumers will appreciate that and learn to align their tastes with you. Not necessarily, that doesn't mean that they have to like everything you like, but they'll understand where their palate sits in comparison to yours, rather than following trends in wine, that go up and down, and it'll be clear that, do you really believe in those wines, or do you really like those wines or not? And cast a bit of shadow over that. So I think buy wine and sell wine that you really genuinely like.
Building those relationships with the producers and making sure the wines that you have are, a term that's been used is like compelling wines that you can.
Yeah, I think so. I think knowing a bit of the story behind the wine, where it's from, who made it, how was it made, not just buying the label.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We'll talk about that a bit later.
Okay.
Okay. Next question is, if you could bottle, I mentioned your life like a vintage, what vintage would it be and why?
There's been a couple of good ones.
Yeah.
But the year after I finished university, so that was 2011, a whole bunch of us, did 6 months in Europe and then 2 in America, and that was good fun.
Wow.
Or
is that backpacking?
Yeah. Or going to the Football World Cup in Brazil in 2014, and then going through Central America after that for 3 months. That was pretty sweet. Either of those would be all right.
A few fantastic vintages.
I'd go back to those days for sure.
A dish that instantly brings you back to your childhood.
A dish? Food-wise, Mum makes, Mum makes this roast chook and then cooks the pasta in the juice of the chook, and it's got so much flavour. It's awesome. Good Chardonnay with that, and you're sorted.
Beautiful. Last one, as per your Instagram, you love your travels. Those moments of your life is around traveling through South America as well. But what's your favourite place in the world?
Well, my girlfriend's Italian.
Yeah.
So the last number of years we've been going back there kind of annually. And and she works in wine too. So it's not like I have to drag her around to wine regions. She's just as happy as I am. So going through Piedmont and Barolo has been great. We did a family trip with like mum and dad there a number of years ago, and then Eleanor and I were there again more recently. So up around Piedmont's pretty great. I just think, like I said before, food wise, Italy does it better than anyone. The Italian people are really warm and hospitable.
Wouldn't the French have something to say against that?
Well, I think the French have some very high highs, but if you're just cruising around a rural part of France, sometimes you get some pretty dud food. And maybe a bit more of a colder sort of attitude, just to generalize, whereas the Italians are a bit more warm and welcoming, and you get a $10 bowl of pasta and it's incredible. So
as long as you don't ask for pineapple on your pizza.
There's a few ways to really stand out as a tourist. That'd be one of them.
Which leads us into your wine journey. You grew up with wine, but was there a moment, like you mentioned before, your siblings kind of went their own way, but is there a certain moment in your one that you've kind of fell into wine? No, this is where I want to be.
Yeah, I mean, people say I grew up with wine, which is somewhat true. Like my whole life, this has been the family store. But I really knew very little about wine until I turned 18 and actually started working here. But it was a job to do through university, and pretty quickly started to like wine itself. I liked the industry, and it's a pretty tight-knit industry in Sydney. And in Australia. So I like that. I like the travel component of visiting different regions. And you start learning more and more about wine. So I loved all that. I do remember going to a tasting with Dad when I was probably 18 or 19 and trying some top things. I remember what the wine was. It was Gigal La Turque, Côte-Rôtie.
Wow.
05. And I just remember turning to Dad going, what the hell is this? And for my birthday a month later, he gave me a bottle, and I've still got it. I haven't drunk it yet. And that was in 07 or 08, I guess. So, that's a memorable bottle. And I mean, these days, it's probably not the style of wine I love. So I'm wondering when we do eventually drink it, if I'm going to go, wow, it's everything I hoped again. Or if I'm like, oh, it's good, but I'd prefer other things now. So I'm cautious that.
When are you going to drink it though?
I don't know.
Is there a window?
Well, I think wines like that, even 20 years for that wine is maybe not enough. So I'm thinking I'm in no rush, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in no rush. But yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
You said it didn't really hit you till like 18 or 19. Prior to 18, what did you think of wine though? What was wine for you?
Me and my brother and sister used to like sarcastically mock mum and dad around the dinner table because they would talk about, oh, I can smell rosemary and I can smell, dried herb and this and that. And my brother would always just sarcastically mock them for that. So that was probably my memory of it, just like thinking this is all a wank, which is probably what half the Australian population thinks of wine anyway.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I actually started drinking it.
Yeah. So you said you fell in love with the travel, the whole speaking to producers, but did you ever want to pursue anything else though? If you weren't in wine, what would you be doing?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I did a very generic arts degree at Sydney University, so it wasn't like career specific because I didn't have much of a clue. When it became obvious I wasn't going to be a pro footballer, I didn't have, I wasn't going in certain directions. So it's probably a good thing that this came across. Yeah.
We'll delve into Five Ways itself. So I was saying it's a very small shop, a very small door. You got the really tight stairways as well. But what is Five Way Cellars?
Yeah, so it's basically an independent wine store specializing in European wine for sure, but also sort of, I really dislike the term boutique, but independent Australian producers and quality focused producers from anywhere in the world is basically it. We're not seeking out a certain style or a certain profile of a producer. They're basically, the bottom line is that the wine's got to be really high quality. And in some cases, it can be a big producer. It doesn't have to be a small producer. The wine has to be good. And Dad's always said that he actually likes that the shop is very small because it means you can be very selective. And like, if you've only got a small space, you don't want to fill it with crap, So make sure everything in here is of a certain standard because it's, you don't have all this room where you can have to fill gaps or something. So it has to be of a good standard. But then, the wine does take we've got 10 times as much Burgundy as we do Bordeaux. Like Bordeaux's never been one of Dad's things. It's not one of my things either, whereas we love Burgundy. So, and Italian's very strong, for example. So the shelves do become filled with things that you like more than others.
A representation of both that yourself and your dad and your mum as well to extent as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I said it's nearly 40 years. So it started in 1987.
Yes.
Yeah, by your mum and dad, Ian and Prue.
Yeah.
Do you know what their vision was when they first kicked it off?
Yeah, so Dad went through university. He did economics. He got into wine during university and he was the so-called cellar master at his college at university. But they were just drinking.
That was an official title though, right?
It was. I don't know what it involved. Like, I don't know what they were drinking. Nothing special. But so he was building an interest then. And then, but he got a job in like computing, which we always don't know how that works. He can barely turn a computer on. So I don't know how that works. But then he was into wine and then basically spent a year in Europe, I think in the early 80s. And at the time in Australia, the wine scene here is not what it is today. There were very few importers of European wine.
This was pre-Dan Murphy's.
Yeah, definitely way before that. There was literally just a handful of people bringing in some wine from Europe. Yeah. A lot of Australians, compared to the knowledge now, wouldn't have known a thing about some of the regions we take for granted now. So he came back being like, I want to have a shop that sells this sort of stuff that I'm seeing in Europe and that I love, but you don't see it around Australia often. There were bits and pieces, but you didn't see much of it. So this where we're sitting now, it's an old converted terrace built in the late 1800s, but it was a bottle shop already. It was an old lady selling, fortified casks to the locals. So Dad bought the shop and turned it into a sort of more, I wouldn't say high end because nothing about the place is pretty much falling down, but the wine itself is very specialized and great quality. But we're not trying to be flash because look around, it's not. It's,
The table is, I think, propped up on boxes of wines.
The table is a plank of wood on cases of Burgundy. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So growing up, you would have seen mum and dad at the shop. What were your observations during that time? Was it like a grind for them? Was it a true passion for them? Like, was it a love?
Yeah. Oh, Dad definitely did a lot of hours for sure, but it was, I wouldn't say it was a grind because he really liked it and it was definitely became his almost his whole identity over his life for sure. So it wasn't a grind, but it was, it was like the massive focus for sure. And like that, over the time, it sort of became known as one of these spots in Sydney to get great Barolo or Burgundy or German Riesling. Like Dad's, like I mentioned we love Burgundy, but for Dad, that's probably been more recent, as in like the last 20 years, whereas the 20 years before that, it was always and still is Italian wine and German Riesling are probably his two biggest passions. Yeah.
And he takes pride in that as well, like having people come to him go, he knows that Five Ways is a place.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay. You mentioned before, like before you were 18, there was the mocking around the notes. Were there things that you observed then that you didn't really understand? And now it kind of makes a bit more sense now as you kind of grown up?
About wine itself,
and also the business itself.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, I remember when I think Mum and Dad, I was 18 and Mum and Dad were going away for a weekend. I was living at home and Dad left me a bottle of wine to drink over the weekend, and he came and I drank it, and he came back on the Monday or whatever and said, "Oh, like, what'd you think?" And I remember lying, being like, "Yeah, it was really good," but I remember it being so tannic. Yeah. It probably wasn't so tannic. It was probably just I wasn't used to tannin at all. It was, but I kind of did have to force it down. Yeah. But that sort of, I still remember it because I was like, oh, you know, wine, it's not just about alcohol. When you're 18, you're like trying to wrap your head around why people really
get into wine.
Yeah, and really can sit down and talk for hours about it. Yeah. It's not about just drinking or getting drunk. It's about looking into the wine and analyzing it and, you know, assessing it for its qualities. Yeah. So that wine at least, even though I didn't like it, made me think about wine a bit more.
And does that lead you to like your moments around traveling through Europe and America and South America? Is it always based around wine? Are you introducing your mates to the world of wine as well?
Yeah, there's a bit of that. Like, friends do, more so now that we're a pinch older, like to travel. Like, oh, hey, I'm going to be in Florence. Like, where can you suggest for me to go and have, you know, a couple of days to visit some wineries or something? So yeah, I'm happy to help friends there for sure. The travel thing, sometimes it's like I mentioned the week in Germany, we purely went there to have a week of wine in Germany, and it was late June, and some of my friends were like, why are you going to Germany? Isn't it like peak season to go to the Greek islands? And I was like, no, we're going to Germany for sure. But the travel and wine thing often go hand in hand. Yeah.
Awesome. So we talked about Five Ways, and the hook was around what makes a bottle shop more than just a bottle shop as well. Like for you, like what's the differentiator for Five Ways to any other bottle shop, or let's say even any other retailer?
It's definitely the connections you make with customers, and getting to know customers, and your customers getting to know you, and you know, to the point where some customers, you know, call me up and are like, hey, I've got this really special bottle. Can you come over and drink it with me? Because because they're very generous, but they're really into wine, and perhaps even their best friends are not into wine. And they're like, this is a wine I want to talk about and get to know, and I want a few opinions on it. So it's like, come around and let's drink it. And, you know, so connections like that are really great. Or, customers that just over time you get to know and you can help them build a cellar, and they come back to you and go, hey, like that wine you sold me last week was so good. It was a perfect thing for that occasion or whatever. And you do get some saying, hey, that wine last week.
Too tannic.
The dud, or like not what I was after. Yeah. And that's okay, because like I say to people, look, you can't love every bottle of wine you're going to drink. Yeah. And also when they're like, oh, I don't want to offend you, but I didn't like that one. I was like, I didn't make it, so you're not offending me, but I'm sorry that it wasn't perfect for that occasion. But that's going to be part of wine. You know, you can't expect to love every bottle unless you're going to be if you want to explore wine, you're not going to love everything. Unless you want to go home and drink the same thing every week because you know you like it, then that's fine. But for me, that's pretty boring. Yeah. So if you want to explore wine and take people's advice, you're going to get some things that you don't love. But for me, that's part of it.
Yeah, that's my journey as well. Like as you drink more, you understand what you enjoy a lot more as well. And also your palate evolves over time as well. You prefer more maybe the sweeter ones before, and then more tannic ones later on, then like move into Burgundy and whatever like that.
Yeah. I mean, I always say to customers who like love Pinot, I'm like, don't fill your cellar just with Pinot, because in 10 years' time, you don't know where your palate's going to be. And we've got a lot of customers who, you know, people of Dad's age who in Australia, the selection was smaller back then, but they bought a case of Penfolds every year or multiple cases. Yeah. You know, a dozen 389 and a dozen bin 28 and, you know, maybe a few bottles of Grange. And like now they're like, I've got a cellar full of Shiraz and all I want to drink is Pinot. But the same could happen if you filled your cellar with Pinot. So it's like having a diverse cellar across varieties and regions and producers is a good way to go, I think.
What does your cellar look like?
I think the main difference of my generation compared to Dad's is that people back then, if you were into wine, you'd find your favorites and you'd go, yep, I'll buy 12 of that, 12 of that, 12 of that. And wine in general has gone up a lot in price. So my favorites, I'm like, one, or if I'm lucky, 2 bottles of that, 2 bottles of that. So it's a bit more of a mismatched collection of all sorts of things. But there are a few producers or certain wines that I'm like, okay, I'll buy 1 bottle of that each year and maybe track it, or 2 maybe. But yeah, like I'm building up a bit of a stash over the years.
So I guess one of the wines that you like at the moment is probably this wine here. What is it and why did you pick this one?
Yeah, so Domaine Chaufit, they're a producer based in Colmar, which is the biggest city of Alsace, up in the northeast of France. Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's a producer that's only been imported into Australia for the last 2 or 3 years. Second generation producer. The father started the estate, say 40 years ago, maybe a bit older than Five Way Cellars, but a similar time frame, which is a pretty short amount of time when we're talking about French producers. Their neighbours or near neighbours, Domaine Trimbach, for example, started in the 1500s. Or something like that. It probably says it on the bottle there behind you.
1626.
1620. Yeah, there you go. So Chaufit starting in the, I think it was in the 70s, let's say, perhaps. They're a very recent producer, but they are now second generation. And I visited with the Australian importer in 2024. We did a week in the Rhone and a week in Burgundy, but the weekend between the two was a long weekend in France at the time. So we shot up to Alsace and had half a day at the winery at Chaufit. And then the next morning we went to this vineyard site, and it was definitely one of the most impressive and crazy vineyard sites I've ever seen. So the wine itself is Riesling. It's from a Grand Cru in Alsace called Rangen, and Rangen is Alsace's most southerly Grand Cru, and it's got a direct south exposition, meaning a lot of ripeness, and Alsace already gets a lot of ripeness in general. So we went to the vineyard, and there's 2 main producers have holdings in Rangen, Chaufit and Zindhumbrecht. That's the other Rangen Riesling from the same site. And it's just a mega steep vineyard planted over volcanic soils.
Is it like the Mosel, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's that sort of level. Volcanic soils and very low yielding. I remember the winemaker saying, everyone says that they'd love to have holdings in Rangen, but I don't think anyone wants to work in Rangen because the wines are incredible, but the manual work that's involved is quite a lot.
Yeah.
But I really like the wine. Yeah.
And it was always confusing in Alsatians, like German and French type of border. But Grand Cru, what is that, like Grand Cru is in top, or how do we look at that?
Yeah, the term Grand Cru in Alsace is not quite, it doesn't carry the same weight as a wood in Burgundy. Yeah, basically it is a vineyard classification, as it is in Burgundy compared to how the Bordelais use the term, which is totally different. But when the Grand Crus were handed out, they were perhaps a touch too generous, you could argue. However, having seen this site is a genuine Grand Cru. Yeah. It's a really special site. But yeah, you're right. Alsace is a bit of a harder one to wrap your head around compared to Burgundy. Well, I mean, Burgundy's not easy, but Alsace is a real patchwork. We're not in Burgundy. You're talking usually clay over limestone in terms of soil to various degrees. But Alsace is, here we've got volcanic soils. Next door, you've got slate. Then you've got schist up the road. It's a real patchwork. So, which makes it quite interesting, but sometimes harder to track.
And that's why we need people like yourselves and Five Way Cellars to guide us on that journey.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. And one of the elements there is trust, right? Trust from the consumer with a bottle shop like yourselves. How do you build that trust with the consumer?
I think so. Like, as you said, the store is small and it's a Saturday afternoon right now, and the shop's been quite busy downstairs today. But overall, foot traffic in the shop is probably only 25% of our business. What's probably, definitely stronger is our email database. So we're sending out emails throughout the week, and we're writing about wine, and we're trying to write about wine from our own perspective. We, of course, use third-party notes from wine journalists, but we also try to write a good amount ourselves. So we try to put across our opinions, and having the physical store also puts a face to the name.
Your opinions, not AI's opinions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think people like the, the human connection of this sort of stuff. But yeah, and also like we do plenty of events. Like right now downstairs in the shop, there's a tasting going on, just casually, just free, just 4 bottles open. Yeah. But we do other things upstairs here around the table where it's sit down and meet the winemaker and chat about the wine, or dinners in town, in a restaurant, and putting these events on when people can actually connect with the shop, connect with us, connect with the wines, be introduced to a winemaker. It all sort of helps.
Yeah, I think like in corporate and also especially in retail as well, it's very much a people business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What are the things and tools that you've observed with your dad in terms of creating that trust with the people and that communication as well? Because I'm sure when I started the wine journey, I was going to a bottle shop like this and I'll be frightened, I'll be scared, I'll be asking stupid questions as well.
Yeah, I think like the free tasting, for example, is just a really good way to bring people in and trying to point out that there aren't stupid questions. Like if the fact that you're asking a question is great because it shows you're interested in trying to learn. And even before Dad opened this shop, he always references Peter Bourne, who's a well-known Australian wine journalist, and he was a retailer and he's worn a few different hats. And we know Peter really well. But before Dad opened Five Ways, Peter had a shop down in, where was it? I can't remember. It was in Sydney somewhere. It was South Sydney, and Dad would go along to his tastings and that was when Dad started to learn from Peter, like ask questions of Peter and learn about wine that way. So that's one example of connecting with people. And a lot of the Australian winemakers, we have winemakers through here all the time. And they like to be able to, they're really appreciative when we put on or order some of their wine and introduce the wines to the Sydney market. Say a producer from the Yarra Valley in Victoria or McLaren Vale in South Australia, and they're like, oh, it's so good that Five Ways is sort of my link between the winemaker and their customer. Maybe they first tried the wine in a restaurant, but then they come in and buy them here, or vice versa.
Yeah, I'm just going to build on that point. Like I feel with a bottle shop, there's probably a lot of people going, hey, guys, sell my wine, sell my wine, sell my wine. But there's also the demand side of it as well. Like, is it hard to say no? Like, how do you go through that filtering triage?
Yeah, it is. No, that's a good point, because honestly, the amount of, and right now, especially like the market in general in Sydney is a bit flat, in Australia probably. And there's a lot of people with wine to sell. And where, as you said, it's a pretty small shop, so we don't have heaps of room. So the amount of requests for appointments, hey, can I come and show you some wine? Hey, do you want to buy this or that? It's like way more than we can handle. Yeah. So you're constantly having to pick and choose and knock back people, which is it's a bit like I'd love to try wine all day and just taste and talk and taste and talk, but then you get nothing done. And we just can't. We just don't have room for it. And we've got a good customer base, but it's not endless. So we have to be a bit careful with that. So it's a shame, because there's a lot of good wine out there, and even knocking back good wine is a bit of a shame.
And then back to your point before, knowing your identity as well around what you guys want to do about what you want to stock and what people expect from you as well.
Yeah. Like I said, the bottom line is we want to sell good wine, the wine that we think's got integrity and been made to a certain standard. So it's not like we're, no, we don't want wine from somewhere. Yeah. So no, if it's good, we can maybe make room for it. But there's only just so much we can fit into the shop,
Yeah, a big part of wine we touched on before is around the journey. So give me an example. Like at the moment, I say, I love this Alsatian Grand Cru. Where would you kind of take me next from here?
Cool. Well, I think Briesing's never been like the hottest property, and like it's in a better spot now than it probably was 20 years ago.
What if that's the case though?
I think with our generation, it doesn't make sense, because it's like, most of the Riesling I drink are great.
Yeah.
But we get the older generation, and it's the most common response when I recommend a Riesling to, say, someone who's 60, an Australian 60 years old or older. Oh, hey, try this. It's really good. It's from Clare Valley. It's a Riesling from this producer. Always the response, but is it sweet? And there was these wines made in the 80s in Australia that were really just lusciously sweet and lacked acidity and were just gross.
Yeah.
And those,
cordial.
Yeah, and those wines burnt a lot of consumers.
Yeah.
So Riesling's had a long way to claw back some territory.
Mm.
But with younger generations such as ourselves, it's always been a great drink.
Yeah.
But then the next thing that doesn't help, like look at these labels. It's like a mix of French and German, and a consumer picks it up and goes, "What the hell am I drinking?"
Yeah.
And might put it back and they go, "Oh, maybe I'll just take a Chardonnay," you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, Riesling's a tough one, but if you like that, I would be then like, okay, great. You like Riesling. You're not afraid of a bit of acidity.
Mm.
How about some of the great German wine regions to explore? For example, Pfalz. The wines of Pfalz are great because they typically make dry Rieslings.
Yeah.
So that would probably be a safe-ish progression into Germany. Like I love the wines of Mosel, but they often do carry a bit more residual sugar depending on the producer. So maybe I wouldn't take you there straight away.
Yeah.
I'd take you to somewhere making dry, ripe Rieslings like Pfalz, which is one of Germany's warmest regions. And Pfalz would probably be a good stepping stone between Australian Riesling and German, rather than going something a bit, like I said, Mosel would be a bit
Sweeter.
You'd be skipping a step maybe along the way.
Yeah. Fantastic. So then buying wines, what do you see as the biggest mistakes that consumers make in purchasing wines?
I think I see a lot of people buying, like having some sort of special occasion, or they wanting to impress someone and thinking that the more expensive the wine is, the more fireworks they're going to see in the wine, and it's going to be just great, like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And it might sound wanky, but often I compare wine to art, and I don't know much about art, and that's why I'm using the example. You know, if I go into a fancy art gallery and there's two artworks on the wall, and one's $5,000 and one's $50,000.
It could be a banana sticky tape onto the wall.
Yeah, and I'm going like, oh, what am I missing here? Like, why is that one 10 times the price? And wine can be a bit like that. Like if you're $1,000 bottle of Burgundy, for example, might be great because of the subtlety and the nuances in the wine, and they're things that you sort of need to work up towards recognizing and seeing and appreciating. It's not just bigger is better. Like, oh, $1,000 bottle of wine is just going to be more is more, and more alcohol, more tannin, more color, and that's great. As that's not the case at all. So I think don't expect to just spend more and get more for your dollar. Like try to, and that's probably unintentional sort of plug for Five Ways. Like let someone guide you along the way. Let, you know, being like, hey, last week I drank a Tasmanian Pinot, but I want to try something French. Like, where should I go next? And, you know, get there over time. Drink a village, you know, Von Romane, for example, and don't go to the bloody Grand Cru Richebourg straight away. You know, that'd just be silly.
Yeah. I like the idea of, you know, it's kind of flipping it as well. Like often people go, try this $800 wine or this $1,000 wine, but actually you should be flipping and go, taste this. What do you think this one's worth?
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously like price maybe isn't even important. Like, you know, in the end, some of these wine has become a bit of a commodity, and Burgundy prices, for example, in the last 10 years have gone up so much where you sort of got to question, hold on, am I getting value here? I still love drinking the wines, but they're getting a bit crazy. So maybe price just should be out of the equation entirely and just be like, you know, what do you like about that wine? What do you like about that wine? Forget that they're $400 apart and, you know, take the one you think is better or more suited to your palate.
Yeah. Okay. Let's say I'm a novice now coming in and I want the dummy's guide to purchasing wine. What are the things I should look for? You mentioned before label, you know, label, price, occasion, food pairing, regions, variety. Like what are the things I should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, all, regardless of if it's a $15 bottle of wine or something much more expensive, like all wine should have a good core of primary fruit for sure. So that's ultimately what wine is made from, is fruit. People sometimes say, oh, that wine had great texture. It's like, cool, but did it have great flavor? Because that's kind of probably the better starting point. You can talk about texture for sure, but that sort of comes after flavor, I think.
But by purely looking at a bottle and looking at the label, I don't know whether it's got a good core of fruit.
Right. I'd say varieties suitable to region.
Yeah.
So don't buy Pinot Noir from McLaren Vale. Like, I hope I'm not offending any McLaren Vale Pinot Noir producers, but, you know, Pinot Noir is a cool climate variety.
Yeah.
It's a delicate variety. Yeah. It likes, in Australia, you know, if you're in the Yarra Valley, Pinot can go really well, or Tasmania for sure. Yeah. Likewise. So when I sort of talk about wine to some people, I try to be like, think about where it's from, think about the climate, whether you've been there or not. If you've been there, it helps. But, you know, picture McLaren Vale, like it's hot, it's sunny, There's some
Yeah.
ocean influence because you're quite close to the coast.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it takes a bit of an understanding of certain grape varieties, but if you can then think of Grenache, for example, it comes from Spain. It comes from like a very sort of arid part of Spain. It's growing across the southern parts of France, which are Mediterranean and close to the coast.
Yeah.
So these sort of things are kind of pointing you, Grenache would be suitable to McLaren Vale. And maybe that's one step above novice sort of territory, but think about where a wine's from, where a grape variety's from, and if it's suitable to that climate.
Yeah.
But definitely, like with any consumer good, brand is important. Brand can be built and brands can have, thousands or millions of dollars behind them. So it can be created a bit, but also a little independent producer who has no marketing budget. If you liked his or her Riesling but tonight you want a red and you see his or her Shiraz on the list, go, well, that person did a great job of making the Riesling. So of course I'm going to jump onto their Shiraz. Don't just take a gamble on some other one because the label looks great. Trust the producer, trust it, and that comes with taste. You just got to taste and taste and taste and keep drinking and keep trying. And like I said, you won't love everything, but try to build up a bit of a database in your head.
I think that's where you guys really help as well, because often you just chase the labels and the labels will be based on the trend, and the trend will kind of drive up price as well.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a slippery slope, like gets you in a bad position potentially.
Yeah, I don't know many people go, I'm going to fork out and purchase a DRC, but I heard so much about DRCs. There's something that's of a similar ilk that's like 1/100th of the price or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you hear of producers who maybe cut their teeth at DRC or had some sort of connection to DRC, and again, that's valuable, maybe it's not. There's a Spanish producer, Dominio de Aguirre in Ribera del Duero, who worked at DRC, and now he's back home in Spain making great wine. So I assume he learned a lot there. But other people tread a more humble path and learn from more of a no-name producer and make great wine.
Which is a story that you can tell as well, because you're going out to these places, understand the winemakers as well, and know the origins and the stories behind them. So I think...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're a consumer, maybe you're not keen on reading endlessly about wines, and you're happy to be able to go into a shop and say, hey, I've got 30 seconds. Tell me about this one and why I should take it over the one next to it.
Yeah. Okay. A consumer walked into the shop. Can you already pick what type of consumer that is? And like in the first 10 seconds?
I'd say maybe 80% of the time. But then sometimes you can be surprised. Yeah. Yes. You can sometimes look someone up and down and have a guess at what they want. Yeah. And sometimes you're right, but other times you're like way off. So you can't, Yeah.
I'm going to throw some kind of types of consumers and see where they resonate with you. Yeah. There's the wine professional that wine is both a passion and an occupation, maybe a sommelier, something like that.
Yeah.
The second is the enthusiast.
Yep.
Where wine becomes more of a hobby, identity, and maybe obsession as well. The third one is the amateur casual drinker, where it's purely about enjoyment, about the wine. The fourth is a lifestyle drinker, where wine is part of the image, culture, and social identity. The fifth one is a traditionalist that always stick to the same wines no matter what. The sixth one is a curious explorer that's willing to try anything you throw at them. And I think there's also a seventh one as well that I kind of threw in there, which is also the tosser. The person that thinks that they know.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a big part.
Are these the type of consumers?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. No, that covers a lot of it for sure. As a retailer, and probably if you're a sommelier as well, the one you like the most is, I think, the one willing to explore and
curious
really
explorer.
Say, give me something. And I think that's a generational thing.
Yeah.
So I often see, and again, generalizing, but people over the age of, say, 50 or 60 maybe, and they come in, they know what they want, they don't want a surprise, they don't want to get home and be unsure about what they're drinking. Come in, I want a Margaret River Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And it's like, great, we can do that. Everyone's happy, done. But the younger generation, people from like 20 to 35 or whatever, something like that, actually many times the total opposite, which I love. They're like, give me something I haven't had before. Give me a great variety I've never heard of. Give me something from a region I can't even place on a map. And that's cool because it's like, oh, great, try this and this. And they're probably the best ones to get as a som or as a retailer.
So I think retailers and also restaurants as well, they're really at the coalface of what's happening in consumer world at the moment. What is that trend at the moment? Is it that people are now being a bit more adventurous now around wine?
Yeah, I think probably to a price point. Like at a certain price point, people are happy to take some risks, but then over a certain price point, it's like, oh, at this stage now, I don't want a dud. And once I'm in a retail sense, for example, because obviously pricing with restaurants is very different, but in a retail sense, maybe, under $80, like I'm happy to take a bit of a stab in the dark. And if you tell me it's good, then I'm happy to take your lead. But if I've got this dinner in mind or this evening in mind, I might have something in my head where I'm like, I want a really good bottle of Pinot and I don't want to be talked into a Canary Islands bloody, something that's going to be like mega reductive and smoky and ultimately potentially cool, but that's not what I have in mind for tonight.
Do you think the biggest drive at the moment is around price point? Like we feel it.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that's the biggest drive at the moment in terms of decision making? And if so, where do you think the sweet spot is?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you are in your customer base for sure. Like our sort of sweet spot at the shop here is, say, wine that retails at $50. That's Aussie Pinot, Aussie Chardonnay. That's a really easy spot to be. And luckily, Australia makes so much great stuff in that bracket in both varieties. So that's really easy. So that's a sweet spot. Yeah, but like I said earlier, the market overall in Australia, the wine industry, probably the whole economy as a whole, is a bit flat and a bit quiet, and restaurateurs will tell you that more than I will. So yeah, people are a bit more price sensitive for sure.
One thing I've been feeling and noticing as well is that there is a decrease in alcohol consumption in general. But do you think with the generations, it is drinking less but drinking better as well?
Yeah, I think so. Like we do see that stat, like, Aussies are drinking less, or the younger generation are drinking less, or some are not drinking at all. I don't read too much into it because what I see is people, including young people, really interested in wine. But what you said there, I think, is true. That our parents' generation, going by the statistics, seem to have drank a bloody lot of wine. Monday night, straight into it, you know, like Tuesday night, the same. So the fact that we're drinking less, it's like, well, fuck, I'd hope so. So I forgot his name, but the guy who owns Vic's Meats and Victor Churchill, and he, he's a butcher and has these great outlets for red meat. And he says Australians eat too much red meat. And he says they should eat less, but eat better. And it's the same in wine, I think, like knowing the producer, knowing where it's from and how it was made, being conscious of what you're drinking. Is a good spot to be, I think, and not just getting home and just guzzling wine for the sake of it. So I think, definitely seeing people more interested in what they're consuming, or the backstory, and maybe a story or the facts behind the wine.
I think that story is important, but I do think there's that sweet spot. Like I do think, maybe before there's more cask wine or something like that, like $5, $10, but if you pay a bit more, like $20, $30, $40, $50, you're getting so much more. And I think, I'm not big on like the fashion industry, for example, but people seem to, it's the same. It's like connecting with a brand and having some sort of, maybe you met the winemaker, or maybe you visited the cellar door when you were in McLaren Vale, or, having some sort of connection to the product is nice. I think a big part of, you mentioned like bottles like this where it's got French and German in it, demystifying that wine piece. How do you think is the best way? And I guess to build on that one is, do you think social media has a place to play in that as well? Yeah,
I think for anyone, like wine can be a lifelong learning experience and a lifelong passion. So just be like, I'd encourage people not to be scared off by walking in here at age 30 or whatever, give or take, picking up a bottle of Alsatian Riesling like this and going, crikey, I don't know where this is from. Wine's not for me. Like, don't do that. It's like, come along to the free tastings in the shop. Start with Australian wine. Start with regions that you're familiar with or you've at least heard of. drink some Clare Valley Riesling, drink some Yarra Valley Pinot, Margaret River Cabernet, and see if you like it and get into it from there. And over the years, because it's years, it's not like next week you get a no Alsatian Riesling. 6 months later or 12 months later, maybe go, okay, now I'm feeling a bit more comfortable with what I understand Riesling is. Maybe now I'll try a German Riesling. And it's something to build up over time and learn slowly. And like you said, ask questions at tastings and go to consumer events. As to the part about social media, I mean, social media can be everything, good and bad, but if used well or correctly, it can be educational.
It's like drink wisely, but also use wisely as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can go down some weird rabbit holes. But
use responsibly.
But compared to say Dad, who probably read about Alsace out of
Jancis Robinson,
the wine atlas and stuff like that, you'd read about it with the odd photo scattered through. Now you can jump onto Keller's Instagram and watch him drilling holes into limestone and replanting his vineyard that he did, that morning, which is awesome. Like, it's so good. And so, for sure, social media can really help.
Because younger generations only have like a 3-second concentration.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Okay, next one is around, there is, I guess, I hate to use the term like hidden gems, but there's the ones that, or the regions that people don't really know about, or the varietals that people don't really know about. What are some of those things that people just are missing out on at the moment, and they're just been drinking Chardonnay and Pinot all the time?
Yeah, for sure. I think domestically for me, some people often ask me, what's your favorite wine region in Australia? And there's heaps, and so many of them are great. The one I often reference is Beechworth in Victoria. It's a really cute little town, but it's also becoming like the flag bearer for Australian Nebbiolo. And I think Nebbiolo is the best producers of making some really cool wines, and Beechworth has become the sort of hub. So Traviati down there, he's actually just retired, but his wines are awesome. Gioconda's Neb is really good. Schmalzer and Brown, just outside of Beechworth in Stanley. And there's others, Domenica, I really like. So that's a variety that less people know about. It's a country town that often I mention it and people go, where's that? Never heard of it.
They see Beechworth honey, so they know.
Yeah, often. Yeah, it's true. It's true. So that'd be my sort of domestic tip if people haven't drunk much Nebbiolo. It's an Italian variety. It's from Piedmont, which I've already mentioned a couple of times. But some really good examples in Australia and outside of Beechworth as well, like Luke Lambert in the Yarra is definitely one of Australia's best. There's some people in the Adelaide Hills doing cool things.
Cool. It almost feels like I love this push for Australian wines, because it's also then a gateway into exploring other regions as well around the world. So what's your view on Australian wines?
It's hard to say it's in the best position it's ever been, because that would be almost a bit arrogant, because I don't know. I wasn't around in the 70s drinking the wines there. There was definitely some great wines in the 70s from, Australian Riesling in the 70s was incredibly good from certain producers. But it seems like Australian wine's in a really good position right now. Particularly, I'd say two varieties that you'd single out would be Chardonnay, definitely. So much good Chardonnay in Australia from across the country, and Grenache, McLaren Vale Grenache, and Grenache from other parts of South Australia, including Barossa and Eden Valley, is like world class. So, but I'm right behind Australian wine.
Awesome. We're going to start to wrap things up. I'm going to do a bit of this or that with you.
Okay.
Fine dining or street food?
Street food.
Street food. Burgundy or Barolo? I might know this.
Oh, shit. Well, they're like two of my favorites. For the wine, Burgundy.
Wine Burgundy.
But that's they're my top two.
City escape or remote countryside?
Probably city escape,
Are you a detailed planner or more go with the flow?
Go with the flow.
Go with the flow. Do you prefer the customer that knows what they want, or the customer says, surprise me?
Surprise me.
Surprise me. Backpacking or luxury hotel?
Now that I'm 36, I'm probably going to go luxury hotel. But the last 15 years have been backpacking. It's been awesome.
London or Los Angeles?
London, definitely.
Paris or Piedmont?
But again, that's a bit like the Burgundy or Barolo question. Big fan of both. I'll say Piedmont. Yeah.
Cambodia or Copenhagen?
Haven't been to Copenhagen. Cambodia was kind of like the first overseas trip I did as a kid. besides like a Fiji resort, and loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. So I'll say Cambodia.
Old world wine or new world wine?
It has to be old world.
Margaret River Chardonnay or Beechworth Chardonnay?
Beechworth.
Beechworth.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. Pepsi or Coke?
Pepsi.
Oh, Pepsi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, bit of fun. Now we're going to reflect and then look at the future as well.
Mm.
So you mentioned your dad's in his 70s now as well. Is there a generational shift now that's kind of happening? And what do you see in terms of the future of Five Way Cellars?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Dad's 70. We had a big 70th just a few months ago for him.
What wines did you have?
Well, not annoyingly, but like initially Mum's like, let's do a really small dinner.
Yeah.
And I was like, great. I'll like pull out top stuff from the cellar, from Dad's cellar, not my cellar. And then it blew out and Mum's like, oh, we got 40 people. We've got a band. We got this and that. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, so it was great, but it wasn't like, well, we had a 6-liter Rhoda Rioja.
Oh, yeah.
I think the vintage was 06, which was really cool. Andre Clouet champagne, bit of vermouth on arrival. What else? Various things out of the cellar. Some William Selim Pinot from California, which is a pretty nice wine. But yeah, so that was cool. But yeah, I think like Dad always says he doesn't know what he'd do if he retired.
Yeah.
So he sort of does, he likes sailing. So he just had 2 weeks sailing up on Pittwater.
Yeah.
So little getaways like that. And Friday nights he'll go sailing. So I think he'll stick around for a while. Yeah. But yeah, definitely slowly taking the reins.
What excites you about the future of wine?
Oh, the quality's great, both in Australia and overseas. Like even back onto the Piedmont example, you know, the quality of wine from there is better than ever, probably. Yeah. Again, I don't want to talk as if I'm like the word on Barolo. Yeah. Like I've been drinking it for 18 years or so, but from what I've read, you know, the wines are better than they were, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago due to better viticulture, a bit of climate change, better winemaking, still with winemaking respecting tradition. Yeah. Because there was a period there where the modern producers decided to throw away tradition and made some pretty extreme wines, and people have come back to the center a bit now, as an example. But so the quality's great for sure. Yeah, like I said, I think consumers drinking more consciously is the way to go, hopefully. But also it's nice to see that when people come in, like I love, like I said, Burgundy and Champagne and Barolo, but it is cool when people come through the door and say, you know, hey, what do you have from Oregon? And in Australia, like the wines of Oregon and America are of course well known, but here not many people do that, especially when there's the same price as Burgundy. So when someone says, no, I want to see what else is out there. I want to see, like I've drunk heaps of Burgundy. I want to see, you know, the wines of some funny part of America or Eastern Europe or
Georgia or something.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do much with Georgia, but you're right. Like, I like when people start to branch out and aren't buying labels or aren't buying wine to show off to friends. They're buying wine because they want to explore it as a bit of a learning curve or you know, expanding their knowledge or their taste profile. Yeah.
On the flip side, is there anything that kind of worries you in the future about the world of wine?
Probably is. I mean, for example, the price that Burgundy's been going, I wonder if that's going to crash out at some point, because it's even in here, it's slowed down in the last 2 years. It's funny though, it's hard to judge because during COVID, retail like us actually had a really big boom of like, it was really good business because people were at home, couldn't travel. We're like, oh, let's eat and drink at home. And we saw a lot of Burgundy, a lot of Barolo, that sort of thing. It also coincided with like the 21 Burgundies hit the market. It was a really low yielding vintage. So there wasn't much to go around. And all these things drove the prices up. And potentially some people have got a bit greedy in Burgundy and the prices are still up there or getting higher again. And it's like, I think they risk losing some customers. Like that's not my biggest concern. That's their problem. We will always have other things to get people on. But, you know, that's a concern in the industry. I think it's like, you know, these people are potentially scaring some people off.
Last messages for the consumers.
I think, like I said, no silly questions. Taste. Never think you know everything about wine. Because you don't, and that's for everyone, you don't. And people who really know their wine are often the most humble, because they know the world is a really big place in terms of wine. There's always more to learn. So when you get people who walk in thinking they know everything, that's fine. That's their thing. But they don't. So the wine should be, there's always something more to learn, more to taste.
Yeah.
There's always nuances. So I don't have a message, but I think it's just a nice thing to just constantly be learning about or tasting and enjoying and sharing.
Yeah.
Wine's to be shared. I think it's not nice. It's just a bit sad when you see people collecting wine as, trophy wine, we say, and all they want to do is tell you that they've got this in the cellar, that in the cellar. It's like, yeah, cool, but when are you drinking it? Or like, what's it taste like?
Until you're too old.
Yeah. I remember here we had a manager here who's not here anymore, and we had this kid come in. This was years ago. I still remember it because I was like, this kid came in and he's like, oh, hey, I've got this bottle of Grange. Do you guys want to buy it? And Todd, the manager, said, all right, okay. Who gave you the bottle of Grange? And clearly the kid, he was 18, 20. Like he had in his mind that it was worth $1,000 or more or something and wanted to sell it and probably spend that money that weekend.
Yeah.
And Todd was like, okay, so where'd you get the Grange? Who gave it to you? And he's like, oh, my uncle gave it to me. It was, it was an 18th birthday present. And Todd was like, I've got an idea. How about you take your uncle for lunch, open the bottle of Grange and drink it with him? Yeah. And the kid was like, oh, shit. And I was like, yeah, exactly. Like, don't sell it. Like, $1,000 will be gone next week. And how about give it to the guy, take him out for lunch?
Yeah.
The guy obviously thought long and hard about it. And he probably gave it to you, when you were born or something. Like, it's to be shared, Like, don't try to make money out of it.
Yeah. So you should open your Le Turc soon and have that
soon. Well, I'll drink it with Dad for sure. It might not be soon though. It might be another 10 years. But yeah, it'll be drunk. I'm not selling that. Yeah, for sure.
I think that's the message. Wine is there to be drunk. Wine is there for connection with the people. Wine is there for the moment. So.
Yep, that's it.
And no better way than have a chat to Ches, have a chat to Ian as well here at Five Way. So guide you on the journey. I feel that in reflection, it's people like you that help people kind of demystify the world of wine because it is so complicated. And, going from this to something else, I get fear and kind of walk away sometimes. And thank you so much for the chat. Check out Ches at Five Way Cellars in Paddington at fivewaycellars.com.au. Thank you again.
Yeah, cool.
And we say here, we drink, we try, we learn, we connect.
Thanks for having me on. Thank you.